was already racist. Now they done got racistier. Is that a word?
What are the ways to address some of these ongoing issues?
Y'all check it out. Augustino is right when he says that South Bend Schools has ongoing racial issues. And how are they going to address this? Because it needs to be addressed. They wrote an equity statement about all of this. This is the equity statement document that Stuart Green wrote 4 years ago that ain't never been followed in South Bend schools. It's supposed to be against anti-racist policies. And what we have here, instead of a school district that is implementing interventions, supports, resources, allocation of funds to dismantle racism within their district and to promote anti-racist policies, instead, we have things like this.
Changing these grades, we have taught these kids how to lie, we've taught them how to cheat. They're coming to us to be leaders, and we teach them how to lie and cheat. And then when they go to class and they tear it up and they act crazy and do all sorts of things, we send them down to the principal's office and say, we have restorative justice. Here's a book of excuses that you can use every single time to get out of trouble.
Yeah, whoever's teaching restorative justice like that should be fired, because that's not what restorative justice is. And at the same time, Corbett shouldn't be having any emotion around it as if restorative justice is the problem, because it's not. It's actually a solution to the problems that you're trying to help us solve.
Now we've taught them how to lie and cheat, and we taught them if you act crazy and do things in class that there's no response.
Now that's a narrative that everybody tries to play in education, especially people that have difficulties with classroom management. They never feel like things are happening to children. But don't forget the discipline data, because it's all there. They're suspending and excluding a lot of kids from the instructional environment. So things are happening to kids. They're happening more to the children than they are the adults.
You don't have anything to worry about. Nothing's going to happen to you. And then you go out onto the street, and that's how you think life goes. What we're teaching these kids is inner city pharmaceutical sales.
I just graduated 2 black males from South Bend schools, and they don't have diplomas in that. And if there are teachers teaching that, then they need to be fired too.
That's what we're teaching them. We ought to, instead of, chemistry 14 or whatever, we ought to have gangbanging criminal education number 1. And then everybody would get 100%. And then everybody would get 100%. Everybody would get 100%.
And then he tried to say, then everybody would get 100% if they practice being drug dealers, gangbangers, pharmaceutical sales, gangbangers. And if we teach those things, they'll get 100%. That's what he said. That's what he just said. And a majority of the people being pushed out are black children. So he's correlating it all, codedly. That's racism. Institutionalized and systemic racism.
These guys, these kids were so lazy on these tests, you don't even know how to cheat right. You're getting an answer in 6 minutes, in 19 seconds. You can't even spell integrated chemistry, and you're getting that. Nobody goes, there apparently seems to be something amiss here. Perhaps someone is cheating. Nope, graduation rate went up. You want 100% graduation? Let me take his job. I'll get you 100% tomorrow, because everybody's going to pass. If you got a heartbeat, you're getting the grade. We have pushed these kids out. And does anybody see a correlation between South Bend, Indiana being rated the most dangerous city in Indiana and the lack of education?
Now that right there is probably the smartest thing he said out of his whole speech. That is why we're all here, Corbett, so we can fix it. But we don't need the racial undertones as you describe what the people probably described to you. And that's why we need cultural competency training within the district, because you basically repeated what you heard from the teachers on the inside.
I'm confident that with the evaluation tools that we have, with great administration in this school board, no one is going to be put in a place in an alternative school that doesn't want to love to be there.
Now that's Linda Lucy. She's the union president, the one that protects the teachers. Remember, the teacher data across the nation, and pretty much probably reflective in South Bend schools, don't really know because they don't ever share the data. So I'm making a huge assumption here. But based on national data, a majority of the teachers are white women, about 70%. So that's who she basically represents. She sounds good. There's a lot of white women that sound good. But when you're culturally competent, you know which words not to say and which ones continue to perpetuate the stereotypes about the majority of the students that South Bend School serves.
And for all the right reasons, they're going to dig deep. But in the meantime, these kids are in regular classrooms, disrupting, trying to figure out their world because there's been trauma, either to the child or the family or both.
Yep, trauma's real. We live in America. Trauma is real.
And I am very, very afraid and know that we can't wait to do this. Well-intentioned professionals will not allow children to be hurt.
You know, when I say this, people don't like to hear it, you know, because it hurts people's feelings. But you look, schools break children. They come out of school and say, I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I never want to go back. I'll find something else to do with my life. And then they say those things over the lives of their children. They're generations of unresolved and unreconciled hurt and brokenness. And you got to face that first if you want to do better.
I'm thinking that we define hurt differently. The professionals have been hurting the children in South Bend schools since at least the 80s. The feds had to come in. Remember?
I think we need to stop making a big deal about what the program looks at and what it looks like.
What it looks at and what it looks like. What are those coded words for? What are you trying to say? What it looks like and what it looks at. Are you talking about worrying about the fact that a majority of the kids that'll be sent there are going to be black children? Because that's what's going to happen because we have a dysfunctional school district. You can't trust that it's going to be equitable.
And we need to hire some very good people with great heart, and we have them.
I was about to say, I hope you do, because all the teachers should have great heart. Their heart, hands, and head. That's the other one. Heart, hands, and head should all be in the work. And actually, if their heart, hands, and head were all in the work with good procedures and protocols and practices and responses and policies and allocation of resources, we would not need an alternative school. So everybody's head, heart, and hands should be in the work. It's called employee engagement.
Who will step up and run an alternative for K through 5 kids. We've got to break this cycle. Thank you.
We got good teachers, we have good people. They weren't allowed to do it. They were shackled. Some of these teachers, they described to me that I'm not a teacher, I'm a warden.
Yeah, you're definitely right. We got to break the cycle. We got to break the cycle of using white supremacist words, shackle, warden. Like, that's our culture, and it just needs to stop. We need to have cultural competency and understand how those are words that are a part of the American society's culture that has been oppressive. And if we're going to hire vendors and people that represent, that's supposed to represent all, not even that. It's not even that. Honestly, if that's what people are telling the vendor, and he repeats it in that way, we have an issue with the teachers that have been reporting this to the vendor and the vendor who thinks it's okay to use oppressive words like that have impacted a generation after generation after generation after generation of people. So yeah, we've got to break the cycle, not just for the children, but for the adults as well. Starting with Stuart Green, who tries to be the face for equity and tried to speak on the racialized, he called it, quote unquote, racialized tone that I just talked about in this whole video. He tries to act like he cares about equity, but he had the power to make equity happen, and it didn't. So don't let him fool you. He talks a good talk. And how insulting that it took him to listen to other people in the community when people come to them board meetings all the time and complain about the racism in the district. How come we didn't matter?
We now move to board communications. Does anyone want to speak?
Sure. I'll break with President. This is a busy time of year. It's a celebratory time of year. You know, I use the word perhaps in light of the investigation that it's hard to listen to the sorts of things we're hearing. I think what the hardest thing that I heard was actually from the many people who wrote me and talked about how disappointed they were, not even so much as the investigation, but the comments that had nothing to do with the investigation, but extrapolated from things that were still in process. We haven't concluded anything as far as I know. And to hear the kind of racialized comments, really dog whistles, was really disappointing.
Well, don't forget, he's an investigator, and those are his findings. So if he used those comments, there's other people using them too, all infiltrated in your school district.
Because again, going to see our students and the ways they excel is impressive, and they need our support. We don't like the findings. We don't perhaps like the practices. We hear how hard the principals are working. I think it's hard for me to listen to people in the community say that this is unacceptable. And it's a false equivalency to say that, well, the facts are the facts, and maybe you don't like the person who was denigrating our students. It's not equivalency at all. And our students are our students, and we need to humanize our students and realize these are kids who are aspiring.
And that's why you need to provide training. Because again, he reported his findings using the same language, allegedly.
And to now stamp them as the result of this investigation is really quite unfortunate. So I just want to say, I think we just have to keep remembering our kids are kids. Our teachers are doing the best that they can do. That we're going to work toward a time when we have these things in place to make sure they don't happen again.
And that's just when you can't believe what Stewart says, because he's been there for, 7 or 8 years? And it's gotten worse, right? So this is where you know he's all talk. Yeah.